Something is wrong in your yard right now. Not obviously, not visibly. The feeder is full, the water is clean, the birds arrive the way they always do. The goldfinch on its usual branch, the sparrow dropping to the ground below, the chickadee that lands, looks, and leaves in under 4 seconds. You've built something here, tended it carefully, adjusted it season by season, and somewhere inside that care, between the bird bath and the garden bed, between the trellis and the foundation shrubs, you almost certainly planted something that is quietly making your birds sick. Not every yard, not every bird, but the odds are higher than most people ever find out. And the plants responsible are almost never the ones anyone suspects. They are the ones that look the most intentional, the most maintained, the most like a yard that cares. The assumption most people carry is that danger in a backyard comes from outside. The hawk, the cat, the window without enough decals. And those things are real. But there is a category of harm that lives in the ground you've worked, in the shrubs you pruned last fall, in the flowering vine that finally filled the trellis this spring. Plants interact with birds in ways that go far beyond food. A bird perched in the wrong shrub isn't just resting. It may be absorbing compounds through its feet. It may be carrying berries back to fledglings that look identical to safe ones. It may be weaving nest material from a plant that is working against it at the cellular level. The yard you built to help them may be the most complicated thing in their world, and most of what makes it complicated is invisible. To understand why this matters, you need to understand one thing about bird biology. Birds are not cautious eaters in the way mammals are. Their entire system is built for speed, high resting heart rate, body temperature that runs hotter than ours, a digestive tract that processes food faster than almost any other vertebrate. What protects a squirrel from a mildly toxic berry, a slower gut, larger body mass, a liver built for alkaloid processing, does not protect a bird. A robin weighs less than 3 ounces. A goldfinch, less than half that. Compounds that a mammal metabolizes without consequence can accumulate in a bird's system at concentrations that cause neurological disruption, cardiac arrhythmia, or liver failure within hours. The dose that matters is far smaller than most people imagine. The bird at your feeder right now is, chemically speaking, more exposed than any other animal in your yard. The plant that appears in more avian toxicity reports than almost any other common ornamental is one you have almost certainly seen in every garden center in this country. English ivy, Hedera helix. It climbs fences, covers walls, fills bare ground under trees where nothing else will grow. It looks permanent and tidy, and in late fall, it produces small, dark berries that are, to a bird's eye, indistinguishable from dozens of safe food sources. Those berries contain triterpenoid saponins, compounds that disrupt cell membranes and cause severe gastrointestinal hemorrhage. A 2019 review in the Journal of Avian Biology noted that English ivy berries had been recovered from the crops of songbirds found dead with no other identified cause. The plant covering your back fence is not neutral background. It is a food source your birds are actively using, and using badly. Move further into the yard. Nandina domestica, heavenly bamboo, is one of the most widely planted ornamental shrubs across the American South and Pacific coast. Drought-tolerant, evergreen, low maintenance. In winter, it produces dense clusters of brilliant red berries that photograph beautifully. Garden centers sell it as wildlife-friendly, bird-attracting even. Birds do eat the berries. That is precisely the problem. Nandina berries contain cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that metabolize into hydrogen cyanide during digestion. In 2009, a wildlife veterinarian in Georgia documented the deaths of over 50 cedar waxwings in a single afternoon. All had been feeding on a Nandina hedge. All died of acute cyanide toxicity. The findings were published in the Journal of Wildlife Diseases that same year. Cedar waxwings are communal feeders. They arrive together, eat together,
and can strip a berry-bearing shrub in under 20 minutes. By the time the last bird finishes, the first ones are already dying.
What made that Georgia case so striking was not just the number, it was the speed. Cyanide toxicity in birds is fast. Respiratory failure, cardiac arrest, death within minutes of crossing the dose threshold. The birds showed no visible distress beforehand. They were feeding, then they weren't. Cedar waxwings travel in flocks. What one bird finds, all of them find. What kills one concentration in one bird can kill an entire group before the last bird has swallowed its last berry. The flock you watch moving across the sky in winter, that shifting, murmuring wave of wings, is feeding somewhere right now. If Nandina is part of what it finds, some of those birds will not make it to the next yard. One shrub, one hedge, one afternoon, 50 birds. That is not a rare event. That is what a single plant in a single yard can do.
Step back toward the feeder. Not the feeder itself, the plants around it. Lantana camera is planted across the American South, Southwest, and California as a heat-tolerant flowering ground cover. It produces small, dark berries that ripen alongside its flowers. The unripe berries are acutely toxic to birds. They contain lantidine A and B, compounds that cause progressive liver damage and photosensitization. A 2003 study from the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences documented lantana toxicity in mockingbirds and native sparrows in suburban Florida yards. The particular danger is this: unripe berries on a plant that is simultaneously flowering are invisible to the human eye in a way they are not invisible to a foraging bird. You see color and flowers. The bird sees an available food source. It does not know what you planted it for. If you walked outside right now and named every plant within 10 feet of your feeder, how many would you actually know?
Pull your attention towards something smaller. A hummingbird moves so fast the eye can barely track it. When your feeder is empty, it moves to flowers. That is how hummingbirds evolved. The feeder is a human shortcut inside an ancient relationship. And several common flowering plants that hummingbirds visit regularly are not safe. Oleander, Nerium oleander, is planted from California to the Carolinas as a flowering hedge. It produces accessible nectar. And it contains cardiac glycosides throughout every part of the plant: leaf, stem, flower, and nectar itself. A 2014 case report from a wildlife rehabilitation center in Southern California documented 2 Anna's hummingbirds in acute cardiac distress following extended foraging on an oleander hedge. Neither survived. The flowers are red. The nectar is real. The bird has no evolutionary reason to recognize a plant it never encountered before humans brought it here.
The last plant is the one most people would never think to question. Yew. Taxus species. Japanese yew, spreading yew, English yew. It is in more American front yards than almost any other ornamental shrub. It flanks front doors, it lines driveways. Architecturally tidy, evergreen, 100 years of residential landscaping behind it. Every part of a yew is toxic. Bark, needles, seeds. The one exception is the red aril, the fleshy coating around the seed. Birds eat the aril. If the seed passes intact, the bird may survive. If the seed is cracked during digestion, the taxine alkaloids inside can cause cardiac arrest within minutes. A 2011 mortality report from Cornell University's Wildlife Health Lab documented yew seed toxicity across 7 songbird species within a single suburban quarter-mile radius. The shrub beside your front door, the one that's been there since the house was built, that one.
There is a layer to this that most people never reach. It is not just what birds eat, it is what they build with. During nesting season, birds gather material from their immediate environment: grass stems, bark fibers, moss, plant down. Ornamental plants treated with systemic insecticides, particularly neonicotinoids, shed those compounds into the fibers birds collect for nests. A 2017 study from the University of Saskatchewan, published in Science, documented neonicotinoid exposure in migratory songbirds at concentrations sufficient to impair navigation and reduce body mass during critical migration windows. The birds were not eating treated plants. They were simply moving through spaces where those plants existed. Your nesting birds spend the entire breeding season in intimate contact with whatever chemistry your garden holds. They do not leave. The nest is built from your yard. The chicks hatch into it.
There is one population in your yard more exposed than any adult bird. In late spring and early summer, fledglings leave the nest before their instincts are fully calibrated. They follow parents, they watch, they imitate, but their foraging decisions in the first weeks are genuinely exploratory. They try things an adult would not. A 2016 study from the University of Exeter, published in Animal Behavior, documented fledgling blue tits sampling plants with known bitter alkaloid compounds that adult birds of the same species reliably avoided. The chemical literacy that protects an adult bird is learned, not innate. It takes a full season to develop. The fledgling you watch discovering flight in your yard this June is learning which plants not to eat at the same time. And the most manicured corner of your garden, the one with the Nandina, the yew, the ornamental border, is where it will look first. But knowing what harms them is only half of this. The other half is what actually helps. Here is the number that reframes everything. Fewer than 12% of commonly sold ornamental plants have been formally assessed for avian toxicity, according to the American Bird Conservancy's most recent published guidance. Mammalian toxicity, yes. Dogs, livestock, children. But birds process biochemistry differently. A plant harmless to a deer may still be dangerous to a bird that weighs 2 ounces and visits it twice a day. Most plants in your yard exist in a data gap. Not proven safe, not proven dangerous. Simply untested, in a category no one has prioritized. The plants in this video are the documented ones. The cases where something went wrong, was investigated and published. For every named plant here, there are dozens of ornamentals in millions of yards that have never been studied at all. What your birds encounter in that gap, no one fully knows.
Go back to your yard. The feeder is full. The goldfinch is on the branch. The sparrow is on the ground below. Everything looks right. And most of it probably is. Most birds in most yards are not in acute danger most of the time. That is the necessary counterweight to everything in this video. But the yard is not a neutral space. It is a chemical and biological environment that you have shaped, plant by plant, season by season, without always knowing what that shaping means to a creature that weighs less than a letter. The care you bring to this space is real. The intention behind it is good. What changes, when you know what you now know, is the quality of attention. You stop seeing plants as decoration. You start seeing them the way your birds do, as a landscape full of consequence, in every direction, at every height, all at once.
3 specific removals if they are in your yard. Nandina domestica, anywhere birds forage in winter. English ivy, in any form that is producing berries. Yew shrubs within reach of ground-feeding birds. 3 specific additions backed by decades of wildlife research. Native viburnum, safe berries used by over 35 bird species during migration. Native serviceberry, amelanchier, feeds over 40 species, fruits in late spring when food is scarce. Native sunflowers, safe, high-calorie seeds that finches, sparrows, and nuthatches use through winter. The National Wildlife Federation's Native Plant Finder generates a free zip code-specific list for your exact location. The American Bird Conservancy's Plants for Birds program maps safe alternatives by region. Next week, this channel goes further. The 7 native plants that do more for North American birds than almost anything else you can put in the ground, and exactly how to use them. New video every week. I'll see you in the yard.